Today we're talking quantum entanglement in biology, so let's get started. In 1978, Klaus Schulten from the Max Planck Institute in Germany proposed the idea that the reason birds are able to navigate on their annual migration over thousands of miles had to do with quantum entanglement. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s, this idea was demonstrated in the lab, showing that photons of light, when they hit the bird's retina, created radical pairs that were entangled and able to inform the bird's biology of where they were in location on the earth and where they needed to be to get to their spot on their annual migration. Now, what are radical pairs? Radical pairs form when we have an atom or a molecule that has an unpaired electron. This electron can pair with another atom, another molecule that has an unpaired electron. And these two can become entangled. Quantum entanglement refers to the idea that two or more systems can become interdependent. You can have individual, independent systems that become inseparable and dependent, acting as one unit. So if one electron in this radical pair of quantum entangled electrons has a certain spin, then we know exactly the spin of the other radical pair in the quantum entangled electrons. Now, how this works in the bird is we have that photon of light creating that radical pair, and when that happens, there's something that's called electron spin. Electron spin is actually not referring to a spinning motion, it's a measurement, but for the sake of ease, we're going to talk about the different options in spin. You can have one electron spinning up, one electron spinning down, you can have them spinning in the same direction, or you can have them paired in opposite directions. The direction of the spin in the quantum entangled electrons informs the bird of where they are in relation to the magnetic field of the Earth. The magnetic field acts on the spin of those electrons, giving them their own unique motion, informing the bird of where it is, allowing it to travel over thousands of miles to their new destination. Now, fast forward to last year, October of 2022, when we saw research out of Ireland showing that protons in the brain quantum entangle as well, suggesting that consciousness, memory, thought have a quantum component to them. These protons in the water that lines the neurons of the brain became radical pairs and quantum entangled. Now, the interesting thing about this research is when researchers were looking at MRIs in an unconventional way, they saw these radical pairs and saw this quantum entanglement, what they thought was quantum entanglement, and it was actually being informed by a relationship between the heart and the brain. Again, hearkening back to that idea of heart coherence and coherence between living systems in the body. We know that when two systems like the heart and brain are working in coherence, they're able to communicate more readily, they are able to initiate action and biological processes more readily, and now we're finally at a point where we have the technology to assess this. Same thing happened in 2021 when we saw researchers able to fluoresce or light up our own human cells in a petri dish by sweeping a magnet over the dish, changing the magnetic orientation of the spin in those radical pairs. Now, when you start to think about all of the research that's coming out about proton conduction, jump conduction, being able to travel almost instantaneously via that structured water, that biological water, some are calling it ordered water, some call it EZ, exclusion zone water. The ability for that water to inform the spin of these electrons or protons is absolutely amazing. And when we look at the research coming out about proton jump conduction in the mitochondria, in fascia, it becomes very suggestive that there is quantum entanglement at work at all times in our biology. I'm really excited to see the research unfold and to see what we can find out next. We are finally at a stage where we have the technology to start pulling back the veil and seeing actually what's happening at a smaller scale in life. So much of what we see in our research, in medicine, in science, has to do with Newtonian biology. We know, this is accepted science, that over 100,000 reactions are happening inside each and every one of our cells, and we have trillions and trillions of cells. This is impossible according to Newtonian biology. That's where quantum biology comes into play, and the research keeps pouring in. We know that research with quantum computing is being funded, and it's coming up with all kinds of new discoveries. Now, if we can funnel some of that funding and interest into our quantum biology and how these nano pieces of interaction between photons of light, phonons of sound, electrons, protons, we can start to see health, life, disease at a totally new angle. And that's something that we need to do. If this is the pinnacle of health, we are in the biggest epidemic of chronic disease that we've ever seen. And it's time that we start looking at things in a different perspective. Quantum biology does not negate Newtonian biology. It adds a deeper layer of understanding that quantum interactions are giving rise to what we see in Newtonian biology. Science is finally catching up to what we've known intuitively for millennia.